You come here, perhaps not by accident, but by a summons from something older than your own thoughts, a presence in the background of your life that has long whispered that what you are feeling is not only yours but belongs to something collective, something vast. You call yourself an empath, and that name carries with it both a gift and a burden, a blessing and a danger. It is the blessing of porousness, of being able to feel the currents of another soul as though they were the blood in your own veins. It is the danger of being misled by those currents, of forgetting that not everything you feel originates from the purity of your heart. Some of it is projection, some of it is manipulation, some of it is gaslighting, wrapped in the costume of intimacy. Let me tell you this plainly. Every light that burns brightly in the human soul will draw moths as well as seekers. If you are awake, if your heart is open, if your sensitivity is alive, then the world around you will respond in ways that are not always benevolent. Those who have learned to live by deceit, those whose egos must be fed by your endless compassion, will recognize in you not just a person but an inexhaustible source of energy. They will lean on your sensitivity, bend it, and if you do not recognize their shadows, you will carry them as though they were your own. This is why the empath must awaken not to escape their gift, but to harness it. Gaslighting is one of the oldest tricks of the unconscious, not only in the private chambers of your family or partner, but also in the grand halls of society itself. It is the art of making you doubt your perception, of convincing you that what your intuition cries out is false. A gaslighter, whether they know it consciously or not, is playing the role of the magician who shifts mirrors until you cannot find the center of your own reflection. They whisper that your memory is wrong, that your emotion is excessive, that your very self is unstable. They plant weeds of uncertainty in the fertile soil of your openness. And if you do not recognize this archetypal trick, if you do not see the shadow of the magician archetype behind the individual face, then you may drown in that garden of doubts. But to awaken as an empath means to confront this archetype not with aggression, nor with submission, but with clarity. Clarity is the sword that cuts through illusion. And clarity is born not from denying your sensitivity, but from discerning its source. Ask yourself, is this pain mine? Is this anger a true signal from within? Or is it a foreign object placed in my psyche by the manipulation of another? To ask such questions is the beginning of individuation, the path by which the soul begins to separate itself from the entanglements of unconscious possession. Disrespect comes hand in hand with gaslighting. For what is disrespect but the refusal to see you as a whole being? When one disrespects you, they deny the sovereignty of your inner world. They reduce you to an instrument, a vessel for their needs, their fears, their projections. And the empath, so attuned to the needs of others, so desirous of harmony, may accept this reduction as though it were love. This is the greatest danger, to confuse disrespect for intimacy, to accept manipulation as care, to interpret the denial of your reality as a call to love harder, give more, dissolve further, but listen carefully. Love is not the erasure of your boundaries. Love does not demand that you sacrifice the integrity of your perception on the altar of another's insecurity. Love is not blind. Acceptance of disrespect, it is the courageous confrontation with truth. If you are to awaken, you must accept that your gift is also your trial. You will not stop feeling deeply, but you must learn to discern what belongs to you, what belongs to another, and what belongs to the vast unconscious web in which we are all entangled. Imagine a dream. You are walking through a dark forest, and every tree whispers your name. Some voices are tender, some are mocking, some are accusatory. You feel them all as though they were your own heartbeat. You wander deeper, losing your sense of direction because you are listening to every tree at once. But then you stop, you touch one tree with your hand, and you realize this voice is not yours. This voice is older. It comes from roots beneath the earth. Suddenly you know the truth. The forest speaks, but not all of it belongs to you. This is the awakening of the empath, to hear without being consumed, to feel without being defined, to discern the symbolic from the personal. The gaslighter thrives on your confusion. They will deny what you know you felt. They will reinterpret your memory until you no longer trust yourself. They will turn your gift against you so that your sensitivity becomes your prison. But within this lies the key. What they most fear is your clarity, your refusal to be defined by their narrative. The awakened empath confronts gaslighting not by shouting louder, but by silently anchoring in their own perception. The awakened empath does not need to convince the gaslighter of the truth. They only need to remember their own. Respect yourself enough to believe in your reality. The unconscious will send you dreams, symbols, and even physical sensations to confirm what your conscious mind has doubted. You will feel the tightening in your chest when words do not match energy. You will sense the cold shadow behind a smile. You will know in your body what is true, even when your mind is told otherwise. This is not madness. This is your ancient instrument of perception. Trust it, but refine it. Do not let every sensation dictate your action, but let it inform you. Do you see how archetypes play out here? The empath carries within them the archetype of the healer, but when unconscious, this healer becomes the martyr, sacrificing endlessly, allowing themselves to be drained. The gaslighter embodies the trickster whose power lies in sowing doubt and chaos. The dance between them becomes a ritual of destruction unless one awakens, and awakening is nothing more mystical than becoming conscious of the archetypes at play, refusing to be their puppet, choosing instead to become their witness. And so you must enter the work of shadow. For what is it in you that allowed the gaslighter to find fertile ground? Why did you need their approval so much that you doubted your own reality? What unhealed wound made you accept disrespect as though it were love? These questions are not accusations, but gateways. They are torches that illuminate the cave where your shadow waits. There you will find the child who was told their feelings were too much the adolescent who was convinced their intuition was foolish, the adult who learned to survive by giving more than they received, this shadow must not be exiled, it must be integrated. For only when you hold your own forgotten parts with compassion will you stop seeking that recognition in the manipulations of others. Gaslighting ends the moment you anchor in your inner authority. Disrespect loses its power the moment you know your worth is not up for negotiation. But these are not affirmations to be repeated in the mirror. They are truths to be lived through the difficult alchemy of facing your shadow, discerning your perceptions, and respecting your boundaries. To awaken as an empath is to walk a razor's edge, to remain open without being devoured, to remain compassionate without being enslaved, to remain sensitive without being destabilized. The world needs awakened empaths, not because you must save everyone, but because your gift, once purified, becomes a light of discernment in the collective darkness. You are not here to absorb endlessly, but to transmute. You are not here to lose yourself in others' illusions, but to reveal the truth that lies hidden beneath. And so I tell you, gaslighting and disrespect are not merely personal obstacles. They are initiations, they are the crucibles through which the empath discovers their true power. For only by confronting deceit do you learn the taste of truth. Only by enduring disrespect do you discover the sacredness of your own dignity. And only by awakening from the trance of endless giving do you remember that empathy is not about self-erasure, but about connection rooted in wholeness. When you begin to sense that your gift has become entangled with the shadows of others, there is a temptation to recoil, to retreat into solitude, to close the gates of your heart, so that no more poison may enter. But this is not the true path of the awakened empath. Withdrawal may be necessary for a time. Yes, for healing, for recollection of the self. Yet if you remain closed, you will confuse safety with wholeness, and you will imprison your sensitivity in fear. Remember, sensitivity itself is not the enemy. Unconsciousness is. It is not your openness that destroys you, but your failure to see what moves through that opening. The process of awakening requires that you observe the projections at play. The gaslighter projects their own chaos into you and then convinces you that the chaos was yours all along. The one who disrespects you projects their own lack of dignity onto you, treating you as an object because they cannot bear the weight of their own subjectivity. And the empath, if asleep, absorbs these projections like a sponge, carrying not only their own shadow, but the shadows of others. The result is a psychic exhaustion so deep that one confuses it for personal weakness, when in truth it is possession. The question then is how to disentangle yourself from these projections without losing your capacity to connect. Here, the ancient language of symbols becomes vital, for the unconscious does not speak in rational propositions, but in images, archetypes, and dreamscapes. Imagine again that forest of whispers. Each voice is a projection, an archetypal figure demanding your attention. You must learn to see them not as truth about your identity, but as masks, as energies moving through the collective field. When you recognize that the accusation hurled at you belongs not to your essence, but to the archetype of the accuser, you are freed. The spell of gaslighting is broken, for you no longer argue about facts, you perceive symbols. There is an alchemy here. Gaslighting thrives in the literal. It argues about whether the glass fell from the table by accident or intention, whether you remembered the words correctly, whether your emotional response was justified, but the awakened empath steps out of the literal and sees the symbolic. The glass is not only glass, it is the shattering of trust. The words are not only words, they are weapons of distortion. The emotional response is not weakness, it is the psyche crying out against falsification. To move into the symbolic is to reclaim the authority of your inner world. For no gaslighter can argue with the truth of a symbol experienced. Consider the archetype of the shadow. Every person, no matter how enlightened, carries within them disowned aspects of themselves. Anger, envy, hunger for control, desire for revenge. The gaslighter operates from their shadow but refuses to see it. Instead, they force you to carry it. You become the angry one, the crazy one, the unstable one, while they walk away, appearing calm, rational, composed. This inversion is the very heart of gaslighting, and yet, if you, as an empath, are unconscious of your own shadow, you will play along. You will take the projection in, feed it, nurture it, defend it. And in doing so, you will lose yourself. The work then is double. First, you must see through the projection of the other. Second, you must confront your own shadow, so that you cannot be manipulated through it. If you are terrified of being seen as selfish, the gaslighter will accuse you of selfishness until you give up all boundaries. If you are terrified of being seen as unstable, they will paint every truth you speak as hysteria until you silence yourself. But if you have already entered the cave of your own shadow, if you have looked selfishness in the eye and claimed it as a part of your humanity, then no accusation can control you. If you have made peace with the chaos of your emotions, then no attempt to call you unstable can bind you. You are free because you are whole. Disrespect thrives on unclaimed dignity. If you do not stand in the truth of your worth, others will treat you as though you have none. They may do so unconsciously, simply following the pattern you set. The awakened empath must embody dignity, not as a defensive posture, but as a living presence. Dignity is not pride. It is not arrogance. It is the quiet knowledge that your inner world is as sacred as the outer world of anyone else. To accept disrespect without response is to betray the soul. To demand respect through domination is to betray the heart. But to carry yourself with dignity is to set a field in which disrespect cannot easily survive. This is not a call to constant confrontation. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence. Sometimes it is withdrawal. Sometimes it is the gentle but firm word that says, "This is not acceptable." The awakened empath learns to listen not only to what they feel, but to what action the feeling calls forth. Anger is not always to be suppressed nor always to be expressed. It must be transmuted into discernment. Fear is not always a prison. Sometimes it is a compass showing where your soul has been violated. Even love must be purified. For love that erases the self is not love but possession. I have seen many souls who confuse empathy with enmeshment. They believe that to feel another's pain is to carry it, that to love another is to lose oneself in them. This is not empathy, it is dissolution. True empathy requires a strong self, for only a strong self can approach another without being devoured. To awaken is to discover that the gift of empathy is not to absorb, but to witness, not to drown, but to reflect, not to disappear, but to illuminate. And here lies a paradox. The more you awaken, the more you will see through others' illusions. You will recognize the manipulations that once ensnared you. You will hear the double meanings behind words. You will feel the dissonance between energy and speech. This clarity can be lonely, for many will prefer the comfort of illusion. You will be told again that you are too sensitive, too intense, too much. But now, instead of doubting yourself, you will understand that what you are too much for is the collective's refusal to face its own shadow. This loneliness is also an initiation. It calls you deeper into yourself, into the archetype of the seer, the sage, the one who walks between worlds. For the awakened empath does not belong fully to the realm of unconscious humanity, nor do they ascend beyond it. They remain here, bridging, holding, translating. They become the mirror that shows others their own face. Though many may turn away, do not mistake this for a call to martyrdom. You are not required to endlessly confront gaslighters or remain in relationships of disrespect. Sometimes the awakened path is simply to walk away, to withdraw your energy from those who cannot honor it. Walking away is not failure. It is fidelity to your soul, and in that fidelity lies the seed of transformation. For when you no longer tolerate manipulation, you send a signal into the collective unconscious. The age of silent suffering is ending. The dream of the empath is to be seen in their fullness, but before that dream can be fulfilled, you must first see yourself, see your light and your darkness, your sensitivity and your strength, your wounds and your wisdom. See them not as contradictions, but as wholeness. The more you see yourself, the less you will need others to validate you, and the less power gaslighting will hold. For when you are anchored in your own perception, no one can steal it. Gaslighting is an ancient archetypal drama. Disrespect is its companion, but awakening is older still. The soul remembers the truth even when the mind is confused. The body remembers the resonance of authenticity even when words deceive. Trust these inner instruments, refine them, and you will walk the world not as prey, but as witness. There is a reason why, throughout myths and ancient stories, the figure of the trickster appears at the crossroads, laughing with masks that shift from one to another, never staying still. For the gaslighter is a modern manifestation of this archetype. They do not confront you with raw aggression. Rather, they destabilize reality itself, weaving a net of contradictions so fine that you begin to doubt your very senses. In the laughter of the trickster, you hear echoes of gaslighting. Did I truly say that? Did you not misunderstand me? Are you imagining things again? Each question is a knife that cuts into your certainty, and the empath, longing for harmony, turns the blade inward. But in the symbolic life, the trickster is never only enemy. The trickster is also initiator. Their chaos forces you to sharpen perception, to forge clarity in the fire of confusion. Without the trickster, the empath would drift endlessly in seas of feeling, never needing to anchor in their own truth. With the trickster, you are compelled to separate illusion from essence, projection from perception, fantasy from symbol. Thus, every gaslighting encounter, though cruel in appearance, hides the opportunity for individuation. Let us wander into a dream. You stand in a hall of mirrors, each mirror reflecting not your face, but distorted versions of it. Some are monstrous, others angelic, some whispering, some screaming. You try to find the real one, but every reflection claims to be you. Then a figure emerges, cloaked in shifting colors, the trickster himself. It tells you, choose, or you will vanish among the mirrors. At first, panic overwhelms you, for how can you choose when every reflection contradicts the other? But then you close your eyes, you turn away from the mirrors, you listen, not to the external distortions, but to the subtle rhythm of your inner being. When you open your eyes again, the mirrors lose their power. You recognize them for what they are: fragments, projections, illusions. This dream reveals the path of the awakened empath. Gaslighting thrives only as long as you seek truth externally. Once you learn to close your eyes, to return to the symbolic heart of the psyche, the mirrors shatter. You no longer need the gaslighter's approval, for you have touched a reality deeper than words. Yet, this journey is not without cost, for in turning inward, you will encounter your own complicity. Why did you let the mirrors deceive you for so long? Why did you trust the trickster more than yourself? The answer lies in the shadow, that reservoir of disowned experiences where your wounds and forgotten truths reside. Perhaps as a child you were told that your feelings were wrong, that your intuition was silly, that your memory could not be trusted. Perhaps your parents, overwhelmed by their own shadows, projected instability onto you. In that soil, the seed of gaslighting took root long before the modern manipulator arrived. Thus, when someone now distorts your perception, they are not only speaking to you, but to that wounded child who still doubts their own eyes. Healing requires that you return to this child, not to scold, not to erase, but to embrace. Imagine sitting with that younger self who trembles in the corner, holding broken fragments of reality in their small hands. You take those fragments and say, yes, you saw what you saw. Yes, you felt what you felt. You were not wrong. This act of recognition is more powerful than any confrontation with a gaslighter, for it repairs the fracture within once you honor your inner witness. The external distortions lose their grip. Disrespect, too, must be reframed symbolically. When another treats you as though your worth is negligible, what is truly happening is the eruption of the archetype of the tyrant. The tyrant reduces the other to an object, stripping away the mystery of their inner life. To tolerate this is to agree unconsciously that you are an object, but you are not. You are a soul carrying both the depths of shadow and the heights of spirit. The awakened empath meets the tyrant not with subservience, but with the calm fire of sovereignty. This does not always mean open battle. Sometimes it is simply the refusal to bend inwardly, even if outward circumstances force compromise. One cannot underestimate the loneliness of this path. When you awaken, you no longer play the games of illusion. You no longer pretend that gaslighting is misunderstanding, that disrespect is mere rudeness. You see too clearly, and clarity isolates. Others may beg you to return to the dance, to keep ignoring the shadow for the sake of comfort. They may call you cold, detached, unforgiving, yet this loneliness, too, is an initiation. The alchemists spoke of the solutio, the dissolution of the old self in isolation before a new wholeness can emerge. The awakened empath must endure the solutio, must allow the loneliness to strip away false identities until the self, the true center, shines forth. Do not imagine that this self is a fortress, untouched by the world. On the contrary, it is a vessel through which the world is mirrored and transformed. When you awaken, your empathy does not diminish. It expands, but it is no longer confused. Empathy, no longer martyrdom. It becomes luminous empathy, rooted in the self, aware of boundaries, yet permeable to truth. You can walk into the presence of the gaslighter and see them clearly, not as a monster, but as a shadow-bound soul who has forgotten their own light. You need not absorb their distortion, nor accept their disrespect. You witness it, name it, and step beyond it. In this way, awakening transforms not only you, but the collective. For every empath who refuses gaslighting sends a ripple into the unconscious of humanity. It whispers into the collective dream. We will not be deceived any longer. We will not trade truth for harmony, nor dignity for acceptance. And slowly, the archetype of the trickster loses its dominion over the sensitive souls of the earth. The work is endless, for projection never ceases. You will always encounter new mirrors, new distortions, new attempts to unsettle you. But once you have tasted clarity, you cannot return to blindness. You may falter, yes, but you will know the way back. The body will remind you. Dreams will correct you. Symbols will guide you. For the unconscious is not only a realm of deception, it is also the keeper of truth. Let me leave you with another dream. You are standing at the edge of a river, its waters dark and swift. Across the river stands the one who has gaslighted you, their face shifting in and out of shadow. They call to you, insisting you cross, insisting you leave behind your doubts and return to them. But you notice something. The river reflects the sky, and in its reflection, you see your own face, steady and luminous. You realize that to cross would be to abandon yourself again. So you stay. The figure across the river fades, but your reflection remains. This is the choice of the awakened empath, to remain with the self, even if it means letting go of those who cannot honor it. The deeper purpose of this confrontation, the hidden design behind the pain of gaslighting and the sting of disrespect, is not merely personal endurance, it is transformation. The empath's wound, once awakened, becomes not only a scar of survival, but a doorway into the mystery of the collective unconscious. Through your pain, you are initiated into a wisdom that cannot be learned from books or doctrines, for it is the wisdom of direct encounter with shadow. You may ask why the empath must suffer in this way. Why is sensitivity so often paired with betrayal? Why does openness draw not only love, but manipulation? The answer lies in the symbolic tension of opposites. In every myth, the hero must face not only friends, but tricksters, not only allies, but betrayers. The empath, too, is placed on a path where the very gift they carry, openness to the inner lives of others, becomes the site of trial. Without this trial, sensitivity would remain naive, untouched by fire, incapable of discernment. With the trial, however, empathy becomes wisdom, compassion becomes clarity, and love becomes strength. Gaslighting strips away illusions of safety. It shows you, sometimes cruelly, that not all who smile are benevolent, not all who speak kindly are aligned with truth. This revelation is painful, but it is necessary, for how else would you learn to see beyond appearances? The empath who has never been deceived may remain endlessly vulnerable. The empath who has endured deceit and awakened through it carries an inner compass that no trickster can unsettle. Disrespect, too, is a mirror. It reflects not only the poverty of another spirit, but also the places where you have not yet fully honored yourself. When another dismisses you, ignores your dignity, treats your truth as inconsequential, something within you is stirred. Perhaps it is outrage, perhaps sorrow, perhaps shame, but within that stirring lies a question. Why have I allowed myself to be treated as less than whole? To awaken is to turn this question inward, not as self-blame, but as self-discovery. You begin to see the subtle places where you have abandoned your own worth, where you have traded dignity for belonging, authenticity for acceptance. Dreams often reveal this abandonment in striking imagery. I recall one dream from a patient who identified as an empath. She dreamed she was carrying a candle through a crowded hall. People brushed past her, knocking into her, some even blowing on the flame. She tried to protect it with her hands, but in the end, the flame went out. In despair, she sat on the ground, convinced she had failed. But then she noticed something. Her hands were glowing with embers. The fire was not extinguished. It had moved inward. The dream showed her that respect for her own inner fire was greater than seeking others to protect it. Disrespect from outside had forced her to discover the fire within. The empath's suffering, then, is not meaningless. It is the crucible through which individuation occurs. By facing the archetypes of trickster and tyrant, by wrestling with shadow and projection, you are drawn into a greater wholeness. This is why the empath's journey is not only personal but collective. Every time you awaken from gaslighting, you loosen the hold of the trickster on the collective psyche. Every time you demand respect, you weaken the archetype of the tyrant. Your individual victory becomes a symbolic act that ripples outward, touching the unconscious of humanity itself. Yet, the path is not linear. Awakening comes in waves. One moment, clarity shines like lightning you see through manipulation. You feel the strength of your boundaries. The next moment, you are plunged back into doubt, into confusion, into the pull of old wounds. This oscillation is part of the alchemical process. The psyche does not move from darkness to light in a single step. It circles, it spirals, dances between opposites until a new synthesis is born. Be patient with this process. Do not condemn yourself for falling into confusion again. Each time you fall, you rise with deeper insight, sharper discernment, greater fidelity to your own soul. The collective unconscious plays its part in this rhythm. You are not only dealing with your personal past, but with ancestral patterns that live within you. Many empaths carry in their bloodlines generations of silenced voices, especially those of women, mystics, visionaries who were dismissed, gaslighted, or persecuted. The echoes of their struggles live in your nervous system, in your dreams, in your responses to disrespect. When you awaken, you are not healing only for yourself. You are healing for those who could not. You give voice to the silenced, dignity to the forgotten, clarity to the deceived. In this sense, the awakened empath becomes a vessel of ancestral redemption. It is not surprising, then, that your dreams may be populated with archetypal figures, mothers who cannot speak, children locked away, prophets mocked by crowds. These images are not random. They are the unconscious revealing the depth of the empath's calling. By working with these symbols through active imagination, through reflection, through dialogue, you enter into a mystical dimension of individuation. You begin to see that your personal encounters with gaslighting are microcosms of a larger cosmic drama. The battle between truth and illusion, dignity and domination, love and possession. Do not think this is grandiose. It is simply the reality of archetypal life. Every personal event, however small, participates in the mythic pattern. The disrespect you endure from one individual is also the echo of humanity's long history of dismissing sensitivity, intuition, and inner truth. When you refuse to bow to it, you stand not only for yourself, but for the archetype of the seer, the healer, the one who listens to the soul. And here, the empath service to the collective becomes clear. Once you have awakened, you are no longer vulnerable in the same way. You will still feel deeply, but you will no longer confuse feeling with reality. You will still love, but you will no longer erase yourself in the name of love. You will still sense others' pain, but you will not carry it as your own. Instead, you will hold it, reflect it, and in doing so, you will offer them a mirror. This mirror is the gift of the awakened empath, to show others not only their wounds, but their shadows, not only their suffering, but their truth. Yet remember, you are not responsible for healing everyone. To believe so is to fall back into the martyr's trap. Your task is not to save, but to witness, not to absorb, but to illuminate. Some will turn away from your mirror, unable to face what it shows. Others will hate you for revealing their shadow. Still others will bow in gratitude. None of these reactions define your worth. Your worth lies in remaining faithful to the self, in holding the flame of clarity without letting the winds of manipulation extinguish it. There will be times when you feel weary, when the loneliness presses too heavily, when you wonder whether awakening is worth the cost. In those moments, turn again to the symbolic life. Dreams will come to guide you. Nature will speak to you through synchronicities. The bird that lands at your window when you are despairing. The sudden phrase in a book that answers your unspoken question. The alignment of events that reveals an unseen order. These are not coincidences, they are the unconscious reminding you that you are not alone, that your awakening participates in a larger mystery. Thus, the empath's journey through gaslighting and disrespect is not only a struggle but a calling. It is the alchemical work of transmuting pain into wisdom, confusion into clarity, and loneliness into service. To awaken is to carry the weight of shadow, but also to shine with the light of consciousness. You do this not only for yourself, but for the collective soul of humanity, which is still stumbling through its own hall of mirrors. If you have walked with me thus far, you know that this journey is not a tale of sentimental comfort, but of initiation. For the empath's awakening is not about feeling more, but about transmuting what is felt into conscious awareness. It is not about being endlessly compassionate, but about discovering the alchemy by which compassion is joined with discernment. Gaslighting and disrespect, as cruel as they appear, are the flames that burn away the illusions you once clung to. Illusions that told you harmony was worth more than truth, or that love required your erasure. When you awaken, you begin to recognize that what once appeared as personal misfortune is in fact a pattern woven through the collective unconscious. The trickster archetype that mocks you through manipulation is not bound to one person in your life. It is a figure that humanity has wrestled with since the dawn of myth. Loki in the Norse sagas, Hermes the deceiver as well as messenger, Coyote in the tales of the first peoples, all are mirrors of the same force. To confront gaslighting is to confront the trickster in your own psyche, the part of you that deceives yourself, that rationalizes the betrayal of your own intuition. For every outer gaslighter reflects an inner voice that whispers, maybe I am wrong, maybe my truth is too much, maybe I should not trust what I know. And so, awakening is not only a battle against external shadows, but an encounter with the inner saboteur. To silence this saboteur is not possible. To integrate, it is essential. The trickster must be recognized as teacher. He forces you to test the solidity of your reality, to sharpen your inner sight, to separate delusion from perception. Without him, you would remain soft clay, forever molded by the pressures of others. With him, you are hardened in fire, not brittle, but resilient, not gullible, but discerning. Disrespect, too, is not merely an external insult, but an inner revelation. For when someone disregards your dignity, you feel the wound only because there is still a part of you uncertain of your worth. If you were fully anchored in your own sovereignty, their dismissal would slide past you like smoke against stone. Thus, every act of disrespect points you back to the forgotten chambers of your soul where dignity has not yet been enthroned. You must enthrone it yourself, not by demanding constant validation from others, but by living as though your worth were unquestionable. When you live this way, you are no longer at the mercy of the tyrant. Whether outside or within, the integration of shadow is the key. Let me describe the process. You close your eyes and sink into the image that arises when you feel disrespected. Perhaps it is a child overlooked in a corner. Perhaps it is a voice silenced in mid-sentence. You do not banish this image. You approach it. You say, I see you. You deserved to be heard. You deserve to be honored. And as you speak, the shadow child looks at you with eyes that are both yours and not yours. Eyes that carry generations of silence. In that gaze, you recognize the depth of the work. You are not only healing yourself, but all who came before you, who carried the same wound. To integrate shadow is to redeem the forgotten. As you do this work, a transformation begins to occur. The empath who once dissolved into others becomes an empath who radiates. You are no longer a sponge, soaking in every projection. You are a mirror, reflecting what is true, revealing what is hidden, and refusing to be defined by distortion. You no longer fight with gaslighters to prove reality. You embody reality so firmly that their words cannot touch it. You no longer plead for respect. You carry yourself with such dignity that disrespect reveals only the poverty of the one who gives it. And yet, this transformation does not make you invincible in the sense of never feeling pain. You will still feel deeply, you will still be moved by the suffering of others, you will still be wounded at times. But now, the wounds will not define you. You will carry them as initiations, as openings through which greater wisdom flows. For the awakened empath does not seek to be untouchable, but to be unpossessable. You are touched by the world, but you are not owned by it. From this place, your role in the collective shifts. You become a guide, not in the sense of preaching, but in the quiet act of embodying authenticity. Those around you sense it. They may not understand it, but they feel it. Your presence becomes unsettling to those who rely on distortion, for you do not play their games. But to those who hunger for truth, your presence becomes healing. For you show them that it is possible to feel deeply without being deceived, to love without erasure, to remain open without collapse. This is the empath's true service. To live as a reminder that authenticity is possible. The world is drowning in illusions, advertising that manipulates desire, politics that gaslights entire populations, relationships built on control rather than intimacy. In such a world, the awakened empath is not simply a private individual, they are an archetypal force, a living counterpoint to the trickster's dominion. By embodying clarity, you weaken deception. By carrying dignity, you erode tyranny. By integrating shadow, you remind humanity that wholeness is possible. And in the depths of the mystical, you begin to see that your journey is not separate from the great alchemical work of the cosmos itself. Just as lead is transformed into gold, so too are wounds transformed into wisdom. Just as night gives birth to dawn, so too does suffering give birth to awakening. Gaslighting and disrespect, painful as they are the prima materia, the raw material of your transformation. Without them, the gold of awakening could not be forged. So do not despise your suffering. Do not curse your sensitivity. Do not long to be hardened like those who seem untouched. Your path is different. You are here to transmute, to reveal, to awaken. The empath's gift, once purified, is not fragility, but power, the power to see through illusion, to remain rooted in truth, to stand in dignity, even when the world seeks to strip it away. The final initiation of the empath is this: to realize that the very qualities that made you vulnerable are the same qualities that make you indispensable. Sensitivity becomes discernment. Openness becomes wisdom. Compassion becomes clarity. You are no longer the prey of the trickster, nor the victim of the tyrant. You are the one who has walked through their domains and returned with vision, and so the awakened empath walks the world with quiet authority. You do not need to convince others of your reality, for you know it. You do not need to demand respect with force, for you embody it. You do not need to flee from your gift, for you have mastered it. Your presence itself becomes the teaching, your life itself becomes the sermon. In you, the collective unconscious finds a new image. The empath, not as martyr, not as victim, but as awakened soul,